So, thank you for joining us. I'm Laura Lee Scott, and I am thrilled and honored to be recognizing the tremendous legacy, wisdom, and heritage of Native American culture that is an integral part of our advanced training certificate in ecopsychology. Pacifica Graduate Institute and Pacifica Online bring you this industry-leading certificate course that gives you the chance to connect with 4 internationally renowned authors, educators, and transformational leaders in the fields of ecopsychology and ecotherapy. In celebration of National Native American Heritage Month, we're pleased to offer you a chance to listen in to one of our amazing faculty members, Jeanine Canty, who is the author of a newly released book, Returning the Self to Nature, Undoing Our Collective Narcissism and Healing the Planet. We invite you to join with us as Jeanine shares from her work on the multicultural self, which focuses on gaining awareness of how the ecological crisis affects diverse positionalities, in particular, communities of color, indigenous communities, and women, in addition to developing the capacity to hold more than one perspective at once. Jeanine, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura Lee, and it's just really an honor. And I live in the foothills outside of Boulder, Colorado, which is the ancestral lands of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho First Nations people. And yeah, I'm just so honored to be a part of the Pacifica community. And this will be my 3rd year teaching the Advanced Ecopsychology certificate. Each year, I'm really heartened by the care and concern that so many have for the earth and the crises of our time, and especially with the commitment folks within the Ecopsychology certificate make to offering healing. And so, as Laura Lee said, my teaching within the certificate focuses on various identifications of self, from the ecological self to the multicultural self and the transpersonal self. And today I'll speak a little bit about the importance of the multicultural self. And in doing so, I also just want to honor all of our ancestors and all of the places that we live upon, and particularly to give a moment to acknowledge all of the murdered and missing Indigenous women across the globe, and particularly in North America. So yeah, the multicultural self, and I first heard about this term from one of my absolutely dearest mentors, Carl Anthony, and he lives in the Bay Area and is an African American architect and environmental planner. And he was interviewed by the founder of ecopsychology, Theodore Roszak. And Carl Anthony provided a critique of white environmentalists and how easy it is for them to think like mountains and other beings of nature, yet so hard to identify with the realities of people of color and folks from quote unquote marginalized positionalities. He specifically talked about how in the environmental movement, there's often this over-romanticism of Native American traditions and Indigenous traditions, and how it's so important for everyone to really look at that and to see the realities of people's lives. And Carl Anthony, he spoke to how many within our society are colonized within our educational and larger systems. And specifically in educational systems, we constantly learn the stories of the founding fathers of the US, but we don't learn the stories of ourselves, our neighbors, and the diverse peoples around the nation and world, or even the actual original inhabitants and current inhabitants of the lands we live upon, Turtle Island. And yeah, in much of my work, I speak about and expand upon this concept of the multicultural self, including, and Laura Lee mentioned my new book, I've got a marked up version of it here: returning the self to nature, undoing our collective narcissism, healing our planet. And yeah, I just wanted to read a little passage from it on page 150. Well, it doesn't matter what page number, but about the multicultural self. And I really expand upon these ideas in this book and in some of my other writings. In essence, the multicultural self is about learning the stories of the people around you. What starts with people nearby can extend to the wider community and beyond, developing into an ongoing, genuine curiosity about other people's stories and cultures. It's about learning about people one might consider the other, recognizing their humanity and building empathy between one another. When we build this type of compassion, we greatly reduce our fear and isolation and step out of our individual, often narcissistic selves. When that happens, we truly open the door to starting to serve the greater good. And so, yeah, you're probably getting the gist of it, that our multicultural self is our ability to expand our kind of small, bounded sense of self through encountering the stories and the realities of folks with positionalities that are different from our own. And so it's really kind of just stepping out of our small identities. And maybe at first we maybe have a friend or a teacher or some sort of, we watch a documentary or something, and we just start realizing that what we thought we know about ourselves and other people is not actually true. And we start unveiling some false assumptions. And then maybe we dare to peek out a little wider, and we're starting to inhabit multiple different identities and positionalities. And we keep getting into this habit to such an extent that we realize the bounded self-identity we had at the start of this kind of process is no longer there, because we've actually changed who we are. So we become more elastic, more flexible, more curious, and hopefully more compassionate. And the multicultural self really relates to the field of environmental justice. And I get into this a lot in the Ecopsychology certificate, along with Indigenous environmental issues and a host of different things. But basically, the environmental justice movement specifically looks at the environmental issues that are facing, again, quote unquote, marginalized communities, such as communities of color, both urban and rural, Indigenous, both Native American and global Indigenous groups, the working class and poor, women and children. And I also feel it's important to add to these groupings both people with varying abilities and the LGBTQ communities. And so environmental justice recognizes that these populations that I just named are disproportionately affected by environmental issues. They have higher rates of environmental injustice than mainstream communities because they've got less power, both political and economic, to prevent and fight these conditions. So the multicultural self and healing the divisions of our current political, social, and economic estrangements is a whole nother dimension. And so often when I'm talking about the multicultural self, we're looking at these kind of, again, I use the word quote unquote because no one wants to be termed marginalized, but these less centered positionalities. And in my new book, I really look at the current trend of our collective narcissism and how the self-centeredness our individuals has become part of the kind of meme of our society. And so everyone's being accrued to be so self-centric with social media, with our consumer habits. We can turn on news and all sorts of different sources of information that actually mirror what we already identify with, rather than straddling across different positionalities. And so this blocks our ability to connect with our more soulful selves and to be compassionate to other people, and ultimately, and perhaps most importantly, to care about the earth. So while the multicultural self speaks greatly to more marginalized populations, a root teaching in eco-psychology is that everyone living under a Western global corporate paradigm is traumatized. So I'll repeat that because it's really important. Within eco-psychology, we see that everyone who is living under a Western global corporate paradigm is traumatized. And so no matter where we sit on the economic chain, in terms of any hierarchies, we're actually all suffering. And so within this in mind, the multicultural self expands to all peoples, and the need for us to be able to see and begin to understand the stories of others, and even folks that we don't identify with or don't even like. We need to stop shunning people in these good, bad dichotomies, and stop surrounding ourselves only with people we agree with. Dehumanizing is a founding trait within colonized nations. And we have tremendous work to do in unraveling this and learning to be compassionate towards one another. So in like the biggest view, if we want to heal our ecological and social crises, we need just about everyone. And so there's no disposable peoples. Okay, so in the, I know that's a lot to take in. In the EcoPsych certificate, we actually spend an entire week working with a multicultural self. And then I teach 2 other weeks. And one, we look at our ecological self. And in the last week with me, we really work on our transpersonal self. And I find that this work is profound and greatly needed for our times. And I hope many of you will join us. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. And thanks for taking the time to watch or listen to this. And we should just all be honoring the earth and honoring First Nations peoples, and really asking ourselves to break the patterns of our stories and our habits, and to peek out and to get a much more expansive view of reality, and hopefully a much more expansive compassion that results in action on behalf of all sentient beings.
Jeanine, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for what you shared in opening this, in honoring the missing and murdered, in particular, Indigenous women. That continues to be an ongoing travesty in this country and in other countries as well. Thank you for that. So thank you all for joining us. I encourage you to go to our website, pacifica.retreat.edu, and you can get all of the details on the Ecopsychology certificate course that will be starting in January. So thank you again. Jeanine, thank you so much. I look forward to hopefully seeing you in person at some point. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks. Yeah.